Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to review the Almaden Valley, California real estate market analysis for May of 2009. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro. And I'm also the president and CEO of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services, who's sponsoring this presentation. Now, if you'd like to get in contact with me, you can find all of my weekly podcasts, also these market videos and articles I've written on real estate at www.soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to get in contact with me via email, just send those to robert@soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to call me by phone, just dial 408-852-0525. And if you prefer to use an online chat software like AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM, just use the screen name The Rebel Broker, and my Skype screen name is Rebel Broker. Now, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying or selling real estate in the Silicon Valley area, please feel free to give me a call. I'll be happy to help you any way I can. But finally, I can also help you find the right agent for you anywhere in the United States. If you're interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate, just give me a call. Let me know what you're looking for, and I'll find the right agent for you in that area. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the supply and demand numbers, as we do first every month for the various areas I serve. These are the inventory numbers for Almaden Valley for May of 2009. Now you can see we've seen some pretty steady increase, not the dramatic increases that we've seen for other regions. This is actually a pretty mild increase, particularly when you consider what happened back in 2001, between 2000 and 2001. So inventory numbers haven't gone totally crazy, but it's interesting that they're sort of bucking the trend. Inventory numbers have actually tended to go down in a lot of areas, still on their way up in Almaden Valley, but not to so much of a degree that I'd call this something to get horribly worried about. Now, inventory is actually up 10.17%. That's 12 more homes currently on the market in Almaden Valley in the month of May than in the month of May last year. Now, just to remind everyone, the chart we're looking at here only covers the month of May, going back to 1999. That way, there are no seasonal influences involved. This is all just the market as it existed in the month of May, going back all the way to 1999, just going back to 10 years. So keep that in mind. It's a good reflection of just what was going on with the market at those times in the past. Now, that gives us a grand total of 130 homes currently on the market in Almaden Valley. Let's go ahead and take a look at how many homes were listed and see how this performance is working out for us. Now, you can see this is actually down. This is actually pretty good news. With fewer listings going on the market each month, we'll see fewer homes increasing the inventory. And as you can see, we've had a drop between 2008 and 2009. In fact, listings are actually at fairly record lows. In fact, 2009 is setting a record low for the number of homes that were listed. That's kind of an interesting thing to note. You can see that back in 2001, we got a bit of a jump that sustained itself really all the way up in 2000 until 2004, when we saw things dip, and then a little bit of an increase in 2006. So we're actually seeing lower than normal if you look at the last 10 years as sort of a snapshot of a broad view of the market. We're actually at a lower point. Now, new listings are actually down 22.22%. That is 12 fewer homes listed in the month of May of 2009 than in the same time last year. Now, that gives us a grand total of 42 homes that were listed in the month of May. And as I said, that's a record-setting low, which is actually good news given the market we currently have. Now, of course, solds are next. That number is also not quite as encouraging. It's not up as much as I would like. Solds are actually down 7.14% from the same time last year. That's 2 fewer homes sold in the month of May of 2009 than in the month of May of 2008. I would have liked to have seen those sales up a little bit, since we've seen so many other areas in Santa Clara County where sales are up. Now, if you haven't reviewed my Santa Clara County report for this month, you might want to do that. It's interesting to compare one area to the other. We'll do that in here in just a second. Now, the total homes sold were 26. Again, that's a relatively low number. I would have liked to have seen that be a little higher. If we look at the number of solds versus the inventory numbers, we can see that we've got about 5 months worth of inventory on hand. That's basically the inventory divided by the solds. If these numbers were to freeze as they are now, it would take us about 5 months to sell all of these properties. Now, as a general indicator of the market, that's actually not too bad. I prefer to see that number right around 4 or just with 4 as the center point, so maybe just a little under 4, a little over 4. So we're a little bit higher than I think you would describe a healthy market, the one in which I think things are a little bit more balanced. Another way of thinking of this is in terms of kind of revealing the market a little bit more. It's also sort of a competition index. So for every home that sells, there's 5 on the market is another way of thinking about this. And that's, again, it's not a horrible number. There are other areas that have had it far worse off. But what's interesting is that a lot of other areas are seeing better performance than that. So we'll see how it goes. Almaden Valley is usually a little bit of a better performer. We're actually seeing that other historically good performers aren't doing as well right now as some other areas in the valley or in the county, including areas like Los Gatos. Now, last month's inventory numbers, as far as the ratio between solds and inventory, was actually a lot worse. It was at 9.5 last month. So that's a pretty dramatic increase. We can't call it a trend yet. There's simply too few statistical points to use in Almaden Valley, too few homes sold per month to take any one month and say this is defining what a trend's going to be. We need to see something that goes over a few months. Now, hopefully our next slide will actually give us a little bit more information on what sort of direction we're heading as far as trends are concerned. Now, just to sort of give you an idea, the county ratio was 4.5. So the county in general is doing better than Almaden Valley specifically. So that's kind of interesting. Almaden Valley is normally one of those communities that tends to perform better than the county, but we're not seeing that, at least not this month. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at these same numbers. And this is just past months. This is going straight back. So we're not jumping, staying in one month year to year. We're just looking straight back all the way to December of 2007. Let's start off with those inventory numbers and see what we can see there. Now, clearly there's a rise going on. The year-to-year numbers reflect it, and you can see that that's also the trend here. You can see there's some variation here. Remember that in this particular chart, there are seasonal changes. The seasons do play a part. So you can see that wintertime, clearly we see inventory drop as people take their homes off the market. That's reflected in the numbers really once we hit September, or once we hit October. After that, things really start to decline, November, December, and then things start to recover in January, February, as folks bring their homes back on the market. Now, if we look at May, we can see that we're at a slightly lower point than we were in April. If we look to May of last year, what sort of performance were we seeing then? Well, between April and May of last year, we actually saw very flat performance. We saw inventory numbers staying the same. So it's actually a little bit of an encouragement that these inventory numbers have dropped down. It'll be interesting to see what they do from here. June of last year, we saw an increase in inventory with a decline following right after that in July, which is normal for the season. During those summer months, we normally see a peak as people... The general trend is for folks to want to sell their homes in summer. Kids are out of school. Folks who do want to move, who have families, want to do it before school starts. Summer is an easier time to move. It's always easier to move in sunshine than it is in rain. So it's just naturally a time that people gravitate to go through the moving process. So that's why we see sort of an increase in inventory during that time of year, so that people can get homes sold when it's the easiest to get it done. Is there anything that's really revealing here that can tell us what we might expect in the upcoming months? Well, since we're not performing quite like we did before, it looks like the inventory has almost peaked in April, which is sort of interesting and a little bit early and not quite what we saw last year. It's hard to anticipate what we'll see in the coming months. My guess would be we'll see an increase in inventory just because seasonally that would be normal, but it may be relatively flat. We'll see how that pans out. So there's nothing I can really pin from this information on where we might go in the next few months. I can tell you, though, that the inventory is down 14.47% from April of 2009 to May of 2009. That's 22 fewer homes in inventory this month than last month. So that's actually good news in the short term. Now let's go take a look at the number of homes listed. We can see this number is also on the rise, which is not a good thing. It's better to see, particularly in a market like we have now, a declining number of homes being listed. We're actually down, though, from last month. It's a 31.15% decrease between April and May of 2009. That's 19 fewer homes listed. Is there anything we can take from this as far as listeds? Let's see. Last year in May, we saw a decline between April and May, but not much of a decline. It was actually relatively flat performance in April, May, June, and July. Not seeing that this year. We're seeing a bit of a decline, and it may be because folks are seeing that the market is not really that great for getting homes sold, which is kind of good. If people are a little bit more aware of that fact and fewer homes go on the market, that'll decrease the inventory, and that in general is a good thing for the market. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the number of homes sold. Now you can see that in the short-term trend, things are actually pretty good. If you look back just from January to now, if you were just to look at that first quarter of 2009, people would be saying good things. However, what you can see, the reality is that the performance is almost absolutely flat as far as the number of homes sold goes. Now, you see the peak there in the summertime, which is since most sales tend to happen in summer, that makes sense. We've seen a pretty good increase now, but again, as we saw in earlier slides, not the performance we saw last year. Last year, we did see the ramping. We saw the January to May ramping this year that we saw last year. So if we use that as a guideline, what can we anticipate as far as sales are concerned? Well, since we've got some pretty closely related data from last year, my guess would be that from here for the next few months, we see relatively flat sales numbers right around this number. Now, between May and June of last year, there was a little bit of a decline, and then an increase in July, and then a little bit of a decrease in August. We'll just call that relatively flat performance, and my guess is we'll see the same. Good news would be if for a couple of months we could sustain higher sales than we've seen this month, but we'll have to wait for those numbers before we can know for sure. Now, sales are actually up 62.5% from last month between April and May, which is pretty nice from a short-term standpoint, and that's 10 more homes sold in May than in April. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what's really owning the market. Now, I started doing this when foreclosures became a really big part of what was going on with the market. Now, last month, we saw 88% of the homes were getting sold conventionally in Almaden Valley. That's actually excellent. 6% were foreclosures, 6% were short sales. If I'm not mistaken, there was two of each or one of each of those last month. So good performance. Definitely better than most other areas in the county. I think it's 8% better than what we were seeing. The county was actually 51% of the homes that sold in May in the county were short sales or foreclosures. So we're doing a lot better than the county in general as far as this number is concerned. And it actually just got a little bit better in the month of May. 92% of the homes that sold in May were sold conventionally. Only 4% were foreclosures and 4% were short sales. So that's actually really good news. And that may explain some of our other numbers because short sales and foreclosures are the buzzwords in real estate right now. That's where a lot of attention is going. So that may be why we're not seeing the elevated sales that a lot of other areas are having, simply because you don't have quite as many foreclosures happening in Almaden Valley. So, and I know that from a listing standpoint, I can't visit every short sale and foreclosure property that comes up, but I do a search for them every week. And Almaden Valley is definitely underrepresented in those numbers. So I think that might be playing a part into it. So it may be good news that is causing some numbers that wouldn't be considered good news, if that makes sense. You don't have as many foreclosures and short sales. That's what a lot of folks are shopping for. So that's why your sales numbers don't look quite as good as some other areas. So it's one of those situations where it's got a good side and a bad side to it. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the next set of numbers. Those are going to be our home prices, and these is, again, just past year, so just the month of May going back to 1999. Not too much of a mystery here about what's actually been happening. 2007, we saw our peak, definitely down over the last couple of years. In fact, the average home price is down from 2008 by 24.27%. That's a dollar change of $284,478. So clearly there's been a lot of movement. Now remember, this is just the homes that have sold. So a lot of this can also, and we'll check this out in a second with what the median is, which gives us a little bit more information. Now the average home price was $887,565. The median price was down 20.26%. That's a dollar change of $216,600. The median price stood at $852,500. So the point of the median is to show you where the number of homes that are sold are grouped, right? So half the homes that sold were priced below $852,500, and half the homes that were sold were above $852,500. So the median and the average are actually pretty close together there. There's only a difference of about $35,000. So that's pretty close. You've seen some other times when lower priced homes clearly were more dominant. For instance, in 2007, that was the case there, and of course 2006, 2005, 2008. We're actually seeing those numbers sort of coming together now in 2009. So the average we're seeing now really does sort of represent the spread more accurately of high-priced and low-priced homes. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at just some of the standouts here. The highest-priced single-family residential home was on 6274 Via di Adriana. That sold for $1,213,900. It originally listed for $1,299,000 or $299,000. Days on the market 64 for that property. Let's see, the lowest priced home was on 20810 Almaden Road. That home sold for $489,900. List price was $522,900. So both of those properties sold below asking price. In fact, the lowest priced home sold in 167 days. So that really took that home a while to get sold. There may have been some other issues involved there. Now, the average price per square foot for Almaden Valley was $399.79. That's actually not too bad. Things are still pretty good. But for folks who bought, obviously, in, well, let's see, where do we stand here? We stand right around 2004 levels. So if you bought your home between 2004 and 2008, you're probably not seeing a value to your home that's on par with what you paid, and maybe not even on par with what you currently owe. But this is a market that's currently kind of changing. So there's always coming months to see what happens with the home values in your area. Now let's go ahead and take a look at home prices for past months. Again, just like we did with the supply and demand numbers. This is looking back to December of 2007. Let's go ahead and take a look at the home prices first and see where we stand on these. Now remember, there can be a little bit we want sort of an averaging, sort of get an idea of what the trends have been in the shorter term. Since we have a relatively small sample, these numbers can jump and dip a little bit more dramatically, because one really expensive home can really offset that number, that average price, so that it looks like it jumps really a lot for a specific month. But in general, you can see the trend's pretty unmistakable. It's definitely on a downward move. Now, the median sort of is a good way to inform whether or not a month is an aberration. If you see a blue bar that is exceptionally higher than the green bar, that typically means that a couple, one or more homes sold at an extremely high price. That sort of skewed that number. You can see that definitely happened in some of these months when we saw a really big jump, for instance, in August and September, again in November. So the trend becomes a little bit more clear. The average home price, again, was $887,565. The percentage price change between April of 2009 and May of 2009 was an increase of 2.12%. That's a dollar change of $18,406. Now, the median price change over that same period of time was an increase of 1.49%. That's a dollar increase of $12,500. That was a total of 26 homes sold in the month of May. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the days to sell over past years. This is basically an idea of how long it's going to take you to get your property sold. And we can see we stand at 78 right now. That's a 110.81% increase from the same time last year. That's 41 more days to get your home sold in May of 2009 than in 2008. And we'll go ahead and take a closer look at this, because sometimes this number can be a little bit misleading. I think it's always better to get a sort of a more broken down list of days on market, particularly since what you do and what your agent does can really have a profound effect on how long how long it takes for this to happen. Now, the longest, as I said, the lowest days on market was 1 day. The longest days on market was 334 days. That's one reason why we have such a high number this month, because we did have a property or two that were at the extreme high end as far as days on market. So we had one home that was on for 335. The next closest to that was 250. So you can see how that high number might skew things a little bit. Now let's go ahead and break it down. Now, no homes were sold before they were put onto the multiple listing service. 3 homes sold in the first week. 6 homes sold in 8 to 30 days. 10 homes sold in 31 to 90 days. 3 homes sold in 90 to 180 days, and 4 homes sold in over 180 days. Now, to sort of give you a little bit more perspective on that, 34 of the homes sold in 30 days or less. So over a third managed to get sold in those first 30 days. And, the homes that tend to hold that position, that tend to be that third that gets sold quickly, those tend to be the ones that are marketed better, that have taken into account their competition, they're priced aggressively given what the competition is in that area, and they've got an agent who's out there getting the home's information in front of as many eyes as possible. With today's market, that's crucial. Agents cannot just throw your home onto the multiple listing service and expect to get a home sold that way. They need to be a little bit more aggressive these days, and with the internet, there are plenty of ways to reach out to an awful lot of folks, so there's really no excuse not to do that. But you as a seller have to really take a critical look at the market analysis they've done for you and at what homes you're competing with, and have a good knowledge of what's going on with those, because you need to understand the mindset of a buyer. And if you're if your agent is just nodding their head saying, sure, I'll list it for whatever you want, they may not be serving your best interests. You need to really have a realistic assessment of where you should be priced to get that home sold quickly. Now, as I said, 34% of homes sold in 30 days or less. Last month, 31% of the homes sold in 30 days or less. So we're seeing a pretty steady performance on that. So what's the realistic number? Well, if you just sort of pick a number and throw it up there without really analyzing it, I'd bet you're talking at least 78 days to get your home sold. If not, if you're out there really aggressively marketing the property, you're carefully selecting your agent for someone who knows what they're doing and is going to get the marketing done and is willing to be very honest with you about expectations for pricing, then I think you could expect to sell it in quite a bit less time than that. But as a marker of a guideline for your scenario, if as a seller, planning for that 78 days might be the best way to go to be prepared for the worst. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at how many days it took to get homes sold in past months. Again, this is going back just to December of 2007. Between April and May, we had an increase of 21.88%. That was 14 more days to get a home sold in May than in April. But you can see that the trend is definitely up. Now, we've had some months like January where there was just this insane artificial jump. Now, what's interesting about days to sell, and something I like to point out to listeners, is that sometimes you will find that when you've had an increase in a month of sales, where the good number has gone up, you'll also see an increase in the days on market. And the reason for that is since you're selling more homes, you're tending to sell off some homes that might have been on the market a lot longer than others. So that's why with months of really good sales, you'll usually also see an accompanied increase in days on market for some of these. But the general trend here, we've obviously seen some seasonal things where properties come on the market and sell relatively quickly. May and June, which are months when homes tend to be put on the market, we tend to see a dip there. Now, notice that this month we didn't see that. The homes that did sold, we had lower sales. Last year at this time, we saw much lower days where those homes that sold in that month would have been listed the month before. So in other words, the homes that are showing as sold in May were listed probably in April or late March. Those are batches of homes that probably were put on the market right at the beginning of right at the season. That's usually when folks start thinking about listing their homes, is April and May for the summer season, and then those homes sold quickly, and you can see that reflected there. But you didn't see a lot of sell off of homes that have been in the market for a lot longer, like you did in previous months of February, March, and April of last year, where average days on the market was a lot higher. And then in January of this year, you saw a really big increase in days on market. It was a dramatic increase from the same time last year. And again, I think a lot of that had to do with an increase in sales that dipped into some homes that had been on the market for a lot longer. We saw a lot of this earlier when this market was starting to make its turn, simply because a lot of folks just didn't get that they needed to drop their price to get their homes sold. So a lot of those are still around, but a lot of those have had their prices reduced and are finally starting to sell. All right. What else have we got? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the map. This is with the locations for all of the homes that sold in Almaden Valley. Actually, a pretty good spread here. I normally tend to see a little bit more of a concentration of homes a little bit further up Camden, just for a lot of folks for commuting reasons like to do that. Not really this month. We're seeing a pretty good spread of folks all the way down, all the way into New Almaden. So not anything here, not any trends here that I think need to be worried about. Just a good opportunity to sort of see where these properties have been located that have been selling. Now, I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to what I have to say on these subjects. I'm going to go ahead and give you all my contact information here again. I won't read it all off, but it's just there if you'd like to pause it and get in contact with me. If you have any questions, ideas, suggestions, or observations, I'd be happy to hear them. Thanks for taking the time to listen. I look forward to talking to you all next time.